Item 8.1 is revision, adoption, ordering of agenda, March 20th, 2019. Oh, thank you. Are we good? There you go. You good, Mr. Freeman? Okay. Item 8.1 is revision, adoption, ordering of agenda, March 20th, 2019. Is there a motion?
Second.
You,
I had the first.
Thank
Then
you.
you fight it up with the second.
yeah.
No, it doesn't matter.
Any discussion? None? Please vote. Item 8.1 is a 4-0 vote. Item 9.1 is report out of closed session.
No report, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, sir. Item 9.2, district update by the superintendent.
Yes, thank you. We have a few things I want to cover this evening. One, first I want to introduce Rafael Barajas. Where's Rafael at? Could you stand up, Rafael? Rafael is a wrestler at Heritage High School, 220-pound class, but he's the first male wrestler CIF champion at Heritage High School, and I wanted to congratulate him this evening. Also, a couple weeks ago, we were able to attend the Panther Sports Challenge over at Paris High for our students with IEPs and our regular ed students to collaborate and do different athletic events there. The great turnout, kids had a great time, and I want to congratulate all our special ed teachers who helped put that together. That was a great event. Last Wednesday, we had our employee recognition event. Thank you to Mr. Garcia and Dr. Freeman for being there that evening. We appreciate your support. But it's a great time for us to be able to honor the people in our district that have done such wonderful things for the students in our community. So we're happy about that, and thank you, Mr. Skorpanich, for your department doing such a great job putting that together. The Western Riverside County Association of School Managers, that's our Administrators Association. We have two winners from our district. I want to just name them off. Our high school assistant principal of the year is Mr. Chris Cooper from Heritage High School. And our confidential employee of the year is Zoshi Trujillo. She's our administrative assistant in technology. So those were both winners. We're happy to be able to do that. We'll have a banquet in about 3 weeks to honor them. A lot of moving dirt over at Liberty High School now. The tractors are there making progress. It's great to see that, and we have a time-lapse photography going on, so we're going to see it go from first tractor pushing the dirt to grand opening of the building. So we're in 2021. And over at Paloma Valley, the new J squared building, as we're calling it, the new extra 10 classrooms on the end of the J building. All the rooms are in now. They've been moved on site. They had the big crane out there last week moving them around, and it's going to be a great facility over there. And the new snack bar, ticket booth, restaurant building is well underway too at the end of the football stadium there. Another winner in our district, Candace Rains, was selected by the FFA program for the Southern Region and Riverside Section Star Administrator Award, and she'll be going up against 4 other people for the state award, so 5 other people. So congratulations, Candace. Last Friday night, I was able to attend the Pass and Review over at Paloma Valley. They did a great job. The cadets did a wonderful job over there, and they did a nice honorary ceremony for the ROTC cadet that had passed away earlier in the year, Jake Drost. They did a great job. Another one of our people being recognized, Dr. Charles Newman, is being recognized by the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators for making a positive contribution to the lives of students. So congratulations, Charles. On April 13th, our Parish Union Management Association is holding our annual golf tournament. It's a fundraiser, and the whole idea behind that is we raise money to give scholarships out to the students graduating from our schools. So we're looking for that. We have a record number already. We're already up to 92 golfers right now, so it's really exciting to see that happening. Our PALS program over for our 18 to 22-year-old students received a grant from the IAQ for their scholar bar. So Ms. Post Dow wrote a grant proposal. I always call her by her maiden name. Messes me up. She wrote a grant for that, and they received it, so they're going to be improving what they have for the Scholar Bar. The district yesterday had a wonderful opportunity by having Dr. Nancy Fry, one of the leading authorities on literacy, come out and train staff members from our school sites on key practices in visible literacy. She's agreed to be a partner with our district and will come out and train literacy teams from across the district in all curricular areas for the next 2 years. So that's one of our ways we're trying to improve what's going on in our EL and English Language Arts program. And the week before, we had Mike Matos here, who's kind of like the guru for PLCs. And we had all representatives from each school there to listen, hear Mike and be trained on how we want to see our PLCs working going forward. And that concludes my report for this evening, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Item 9.3, student representatives to the Board of Trustees. Trustee Stafford?
We have students from Heritage High School, Andrea Gonzalez and Lisa Liseth Garcia.
That's a great last name.
Good evening, President Garcia, members of the board, Mr. Bennett, and members of the cabinet. My name is Andrea Gonzalez.
And I'm Liseth Garcia. Our Linker leaders and student program representatives have been hard at working at the middle school's outreach visits for our 4 feeder middle schools. We have been excited to show the incoming freshmen the great things Heritage has to offer.
Yesterday, our Link crew hosted under 300 incoming freshmen from Bell Mountain and Hans Christian middle schools on campus. Link crew leaders took them in small groups on rotations through various classrooms, our ag farm, and our after-school program where our Plus leaders led them in activities. It was a great event and a fun way to welcome our incoming freshmen to the Patriot family.
Our students recently participated in the sports challenge that was hosted at Paris High School. This was such a fun and exciting event.
We recently had our athletic signing day event. We currently have 5 students who will be continuing their education at a 4-year institution while playing sports. It takes much dedication on and off the field to achieve this accomplishment. We congratulate them and know they will continue to make us proud.
Our counseling department hosted our annual Fafsa Fiesta to celebrate the students who submitted their FAFSA applications. They continue to work with students who plan on attending community colleges to increase our submissions to open up more opportunities for our seniors as they move on to their next steps in their lives.
We had a great turnout for the Coffee with Administration this month. Our SRO Deputy Grant presented information to our parents and answering questions. Thank you to Deputy Grant, Mr. Joe Williams, and Mr. John Hannon for supporting our families.
Our March Student of the Month is Andrea Gonzalez. Andrea is an outstanding young lady on top of her rigorous class schedule. She is the Student Body President, National Honor Society Secretary, and the Media Arts Club President. She is also a CIF-ranked tennis player. She is the voice of our school, of the Patriot Press, news, audio announcements, and of course, our student representative to the board. Brittany Diaz is our March classified staff of the month. Brittany quickly became an extremely valuable member to our Patriot family. She is our senior clerk in attendance. She is a vital part of what happens in our attendance office. She always steps up to help whenever needed. Tiffany Johnstone is the March Student Teacher of the Month. She is part of our science department and as well as the boys and girls volleyball coach. This is Tiffany's first year as a teacher, and she is just a dynamic in the classroom and on the volleyball court as well.
Here are some of our upcoming events. We have our Spear Week for our Patriot Palooza next week, March 25th to the 29th. We have a pep rally March 29th, Patriot Olympics as well, the 29th, our open house and 8th grade orientation April 3rd, prom April 13th, blood drive April 24th, senior interviews April 25th through May 1st, a Spanish festival April 26th, and VIP prom April 27th.
There are so many great things happening at Heritage every day. This concludes our presentation. As always, thank you for your time and continuous support of Heritage High School.
Trustee Freeman?
Thank you. I would like to introduce the student representatives from Paloma Valley High School. They are Maricel, Karen, and Kaylee Miller.
Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing? My name is Marizel.
And I'm Kaylee.
And we're doing the March updates for Paloma.
Morp had a very fun Spirit Week, which consists of Celebrity Day, Tie-Dye Day, Squad Day, representing Rob in his love for Marvel and Star Wars, Coachella Day, and class distinction. Many students dressed up, and we had plenty of creative ideas towards their costumes during that week.
The Morp Rally and Dance was by far one for the books due to the way everything was executed. The ASB kids did as much as they can to advertise and get the word out in the end, and it turned out so much better than what we expected it to be.
Proving Grounds was hosted by Key Club and was almost a sold-out show. There were a lot of performances from many dance groups around the area, including one of Paloma's new dance crews, Exclusives. Good job, Wildcats.
Open house and the 8th grade VIP night was on the same day and was a successful night. The gym was filled with parents and students getting questions and answers from Paloma students and staff to inform them about the fun things we have on our campus. ASB was also able to bring 2 food trucks, which included a taco truck and a yogurt truck.
ASB was able to get Castle leadership to come to Paloma and host a leadership training day with all the leaders on our campus, plus some leaders from Heritage. This consists of many laughs, tears, and growth in each of the students in the way they view leadership.
Menifee Middle School visited Paloma, and these incoming freshmen were really excited to see all the different sports and clubs we have on our campus. The involvement at each one of the clubs was very inspiring to many of the middle schoolers. We're excited to get more motivated Wildcats.
NJROTC had their AMI on the field, and it turned out to be a beautiful event. These Battlecats worked very hard in their competitions and deserve to be recognized through this event.
Plus has been constantly spreading kindness and worked hard on the Rock Garden to remind students every day to be kind to one another. Amazing jobs, Wildcats.
Prom is coming up, and Wildcats are able to buy tickets starting this week. Prom will be at the Wilson Creek Winery in Temecula. Grad night to Disney has been sold out on the day they were selling tickets, and the ASB senior class also got another grad night at Universal as another option for these seniors. Senior movie night is also coming up in May. Many events will come up soon and will be announced next month. Thank you.
And this is kind of off topic, but I just wanted to announce that I got admitted to 5 colleges, and I will be accepting my admission to Cal State Fullerton. So, yeah.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you, and that concludes our presentation for March.
Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations again. Trustee Nelson.
From Paris High School, student representatives Melanie Calderon and Arandita Corona.
Good evening, President Garcia and board members, Superintendent Bennett and Cabinet. I am Melanie Calderon with my partner Arandita Corona, and we're your Paris High board representatives. To start off with Friday Night Live, 22 students and 4 teachers went to Camp Buckhorn in Idlewild for the Active Youth Conference sponsored by Riverside County Friday Night Live. In FFA has been competing at various career development events last month. Our nursery landscape team placed first at UC Davis and second at Chico State. Our vegetable crop team placed 8th at UC Davis, 4th at Chico State, and 7th at Merced College. In AVID, UC Davis has accepted 21 Panthers, 12 of which are AVID and or ASB students, and UCR has accepted 26 Panthers. I am happy to say that I am one of the fortunate to have been accepted to both. Congratulations to Maria Anderson, who won the Paris Valley Women's Scholarship for $500. We just came back a few weeks ago from our AVID annual college trip, where AVID juniors visited 12 universities in just 5 days. They had an amazing experience. Our last round of AVID field trips are happening in the next few months for our AVID 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. This is a message from Dr. Dorado, the college and career counselor. 77% of our class of 2019 have completed FAFSA by the March 2nd deadline, compared to 72% from 2018. All our seniors will be going through their senior interviews on April 9th 10th, and 11th. Our school board members are invited as well if they can attend. With this dedication to his students, Mr. Santos made over 80 home visits to get the word out about the FAFSA deadline. This will allow us to match up 84% of our seniors to FAFSA in the next few weeks. In our blood drive, 139 donors were registered, 26 donors were deferred, 124 units were collected, and we also registered 46 first-time donors. And I'll give you guys Erendita now.
Hi. During the month of February, we participated in Kindness Week, Hugs and Kisses, Pass It On, Mental Health Fair, Valentine's Day cards, and positive sticky notes. There's some examples on your guys' notebooks. Pinacati and Innovative Horizons Middle School came to Paris and retreated to a pep rally and an elective fair with over 40 clubs and sports looking to have them be a part of their organizations during freshman year. Seniors and staff came out to celebrate the class of 2019 with Senior Sunset. The In-N-Out truck came and provided doubles for dinner as the sun was setting, but it was a rainy day, so Miss Asuna, being resourceful, found a 30-second clip of a setting sun and we watched it together. Then we were treated to a slideshow that had some surprises, mainly pictures of the seniors when they were freshmen wearing cap and gowns as part of the commitment to graduate Link Crew's ceremony in 2015. Spring Rally was a blast as we celebrated all things spring. Speaking of spring sports, our boys volleyball is undefeated with a record of 17-0 and nationally ranked number 50. We are very proud of our Panthers. Our spring dance was again a Sadie Hawkins. While we break from the traditional country theme and Sadie's, we still have some fun with its other traditions, mainly having the girls ask the guys to the dance, which happened all week, and the pep rally. It was fun to watch the girls make it special for the guys. Thank you to everyone involved with making this event happen, the sports challenge. I heard a story from one of my teachers. They said the best part of the sports challenge was seeing all the smiles on the faces of the athletes and the family members that were there to watch. If you have never been, you must make time to attend the sport challenge next year. Thank you.
And from Pinacati Middle School, student representatives Nailene Estrella Lopez and Josie Lopez. I hope I didn't kill your name, by the way.
Good evening, President Garcia, members of the board, Mr. Bennett, and cabinet members. I am Nailene Estrella, and here with me tonight is
Josie Lopez.
Tonight, we are going to change the presentation up a little bit and show you our new weekly video announcements.
They are presented every Monday morning. Teachers show the classes the video announcements after the Pledge of Allegiance.
Music.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Allen, and I chose James for Student of the Month. James is one of my avid students, and he stands out in many different ways. He is highly academic and does all of his work and turns it in to the best of his ability. He also won our avid write-off essay competition, and he will be recognized soon in San Bernardino as our 7th grade winner. And he is just an overall great student who is friendly, nice,
Upcoming events. March 28th, the Mr. and Mrs. Pinacati.
March 29th, involving parents at Pinacati, March Brightness, interactive events, activities, focusing on math, art, and technology.
April 4th, our open house and science night.
April 10th, VIP dance, VIP movie day P7 for all students who earn 250 Puma points.
April 26th, the Avid field trip to UCLA.
In May, drama spring play production and SBAC testing rally and SBAC testing.
Thank you for your time and attention. Have a happy spring.
From Paris Lake High School, student representatives Ethan Chan.
Good evening, Governing Board and Cabinet members. My name is Seth. I'm a student representative of Paris Lake High School's ASB, and I would like to introduce my fellow ASB member and representative, Ethan.
I want to thank the governing board, members of the cabinet, and Superintendent Bennett for inviting us here to share the events at the lake. Here is a brief presentation summarizing the latest events.
22 students from Paris Lake took a field trip to the Fab School. The Fab School let our students take a look into the technical and hands-on skills taught to become marketable candidates for employment in the metal fabrication and welding industry.
The Soar Awards is a reward-based program on a student's attendance, based on a student's attendance, disciplinary record, amount of absences, and GPA. Parents of students are invited to attend the ceremony held at the end of each quarter. Awards range from 4 levels: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, depending on the categories mentioned. Students who are honored at the Soar Awards are awarded after the ceremony with a chance to win prizes and can attend a barbecue held for them. Last quarter, there were 76 students who received Soar Awards.
The February Student of the Month was Genevieve Martinez. Her goal is to begin at MSJC and transfer to a university, eventually becoming a part of the medical field. She is also a recent graduate of Paris Lake.
On February 1st, Mr. Bryant hand-selected a few students to attend the informative tour of the city of Paris. This tour was based on the planning and implementation of a school site-based community garden in the works for Paris Lake and Scholar Plus students.
On February 28th, our school gathered a select group of students to attend a presentation by the kind people of RI Mental Health. They explained the detrimental effects of drugs and alcohol on mental health and the way these factors created negative situations and their path to success in overcoming them.
On March 6th, 25 students attended the UTI school tour. Topics ranged from metal fabrication, car building, and tuning. There were various types of motors on display as the walkthrough tour was presented.
We would like to take a moment to invite you to our open house on March 21st at 6 p.m. Please come and enjoy free nachos and hot dogs courtesy of ASB.
The 2019 staff members of the year include Martha Puente, who was our teacher of the year, and Kimberly Cooper and Dave Jackson, who are classified employees of the year. We congratulate them for their hard work.
On Friday, our Falcon parents were shown appreciation for bringing their students to school on a consistent basis. We appreciate their dedication and effort on helping our students succeed. A big congratulations to those who will be finishing their graduation requirements this week. There are potentially 57 students that will finish Friday, including both Ethan and myself.
We'd like to thank Paris Lake for giving us the opportunity to even graduate this early. And then thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Item 9.4, PSEA President Vicki Mueller. At this time, students, you're more than welcome to leave, and you're more than welcome to stay if you'd like.
I won't be insulted. I promise.
Can we get everybody to move forward? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Governing Board and Cabinet, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Garcia. PSEA held our recent luncheons. We had one for Paris Lake and Pals, and we did Pinacati this past Friday. And this semester we're doing pizza, pasta, and salad. Yum. We had a great turnout at all the sites, and we're going to be at Paris High next Friday. And again, pizza, pasta, and salad. So I was fortunate yesterday to be a part of several presidents that met with Dr. White, the county superintendent. And our primary conversation with her was centered around how student behavior has become a barrier to learning. And I'm speaking, this is not just a Paris Union High School thing, this is a county-wide issue. That PBIS in its ideal is good, but it's not being carried out to fidelity. And because it's not being carried out to fidelity, it's become bastardized in certain areas, and parts of it are being done, parts of it aren't being done, and there's a misunderstanding of law, and so as a result, behaviors are being tolerated in classrooms because teachers are told they can't suspend. If they do, send them to the office, they're just coming back. So Dr. White heard us, and she heard us, and she understands. And we did some brainstorming on how we can possibly move forward. We talked about choosing 3 districts and maybe some schools to do some heavy training in. Unfortunately, ours will not be one of them, and it's primarily because we're a high school district, and they're looking for continuity. And so when we were talking, unfortunately, we would not be one of the school districts selected. And I was good with that. I mean, I understand the reasoning. They're looking for somebody that's going to go K-12. And so that doesn't mean that we're not going to be part of those meetings and part of what's out there. But as far as the heavy input into the school from the county level down, I don't think that we're going to get that. But there's other things on the horizon that she's working on that she will be rolling out to superintendents. I promised I wouldn't spill the beans, so I won't. So it's some good stuff. And she may have already told some people to be quiet about it for right now, because the check's not written yet, so to speak. And she was glad that we came with suggestions, not just problems. And so that's one of the other things that I came tonight. I wanted to make and spoke that I had a couple solutions, because I've been getting a lot of emails from people. And I also want to tell you that I did give Grant a heads up that tonight, someone does not want to hear me. We're going to be discussing with the district next Thursday. But the emails and phone calls I've gotten is about the upcoming. And the big concern about the possible cuts and loss of athletic trips and other school activities. And we're confused. And because if the district is so strapped for funds, you had 4 teachers retire from one site, you're hiring. Why wouldn't you offer 7th period assignment for $15,000 each, rather than 6 teachers at? So again, if it's a money problem and we're so strapped for funds, why are we hiring more teachers when we're cutting services? And if it's about ADA or attendance or the number of students, why were teachers at one site told there's a possibility that next year they're going to be roving because of the lack of classrooms? So again, we're confused. And so we're going to be having more conversations, but it is one of the top things that I'm getting phone calls about. So if there is, you know, if this is a financial emergency, then we need all hands on deck, and we need to be having some really hard conversations about how we can work together. And from what I understand, we're putting coaches at each site, math and ELA, at all the major sites. So that's a non-classroom teacher. And so there's just a lot that we're confused. We're just confused. So we're trying to figure out, you know, when this happened before, when the district was strapped for money, you know, we came together and we said, okay, yeah, we'll take the 7th period assignments. Or that time it was 6th period assignments. We'll do what we have to do, you know, but, and they didn't hire. There was pretty much a hiring freeze other than the really essential people. And so we're just very confused. And so hopefully next Thursday we'll have some answers. But I needed to voice that because that's what everyone's bringing to me. Okay, thank you. Happy spring, by the way, as it rains and thunders and lightnings. Thank you.
Mr. Rushing texted me earlier in the day that he couldn't make it this evening for CSEA.
Next item, 9.6, comments by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I got to attend the open house at Paloma Valley High School recently, and I was very pleased. The place was crowded, and yet it was well organized. And I saw when they had the kids raise their hands about how many of them were 8th grade families, there was a lot of them there. So these are kids that are really looking forward to attending. And since we're talking about all these awards and whatnot, I wanted to brag a little bit. My two of my daughters, were on the championship water polo team. I think I've mentioned that before. They had their awards ceremony last week, and Megan was so proud of getting an award that her sister did not get, and that was the academic award. Sarah got just about everything else. She was first team CIF. She was MVP of the team. She gets to go to the CIF banquet next month for being a third team CIF. And I'm just so pleased with all of my daughters. The one that I have over at Scholar Plus is also, I'm very pleased with the environment that they have over there. Dr. Garcia and Mr. Flores who do a great job of making her actually come out a little bit of her grumpiness. I like to say it's because she's not a morning person, but if she doesn't go to bed till 5 o'clock in the morning, how can you say that? Anyway, I am just so very pleased. I know that we had at Paloma, there were so many championships this year. I mean, I might ask Principal Tomasian if you could stand up and share with us what those were. I'd really appreciate it because I can't remember all of them.
Out of our 15 athletic teams that have competed so far in fall and winter, 14 of them have gone to playoffs and gone deep in several sports. So we're very proud of them all. Thank you.
And I would like to add that this says a lot about the athletic department and the administration because, 2 years ago, our water polo team won 4 games. And this year they went undefeated in the league. And it's just like, and they beat West Valley. which was quite an accomplishment.
Quite a growth. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I just wanted to speak about two events that I attended. One was the Poetry Slam at CMI. I really enjoyed that and was able to judge with Dr. Newman and Superintendent Bennett. The kids really poured their hearts into their work, and it was amazing what they came out with and the things they shared with us. So I want to thank CMI for that invitation. Thank you very much. The second thing was today, actually, we had a WASC committee visit for Parish Adult Ed at, it's Parish Lake, but it's also Scholar Plus and Adult Ed. And it looks like they'll be getting their accreditation for the first time in 50 years. So this is their first. And it's so important because this is the pathway that many people have to go back and take in order to become productive members of our community and get other jobs that are available. And just thank you to the invitation from Dr. Garcia to participate in that. And I wish you well with the final results, and I'm sure it'll be great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, 10.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees, agendized and non-agendized items. And you want me to read this first? Okay. So none at this time? Okay, statement from the president. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation. Depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard, the president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that the additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. And our first one is Ray Lytle? Sorry for the.
All right, this will be item 14.7. This will be the recommendation from the CMNF Construction and the Facility Director to recommend rejecting Category 7. Category 7 is the drywall plaster category. I'm Ray Lytle with Sierra Lathing. I'm the vice president. I'm speaking on behalf of not only for the company, but for the employees and the foreman, who's a military veteran we had for this project to run, really wants to know some questions and get some facts. And the facts that we know, in the absence of getting any notice other than the agenda on Friday, I'm kind of speeding through this. And we didn't receive any notice from the CM or anybody that this was being rejected. But we want to find, the facts is a lot of the other categories were way over budget. We're talking 122%, 67%, 58%. We're talking millions of dollars for each one of these categories that we find is interesting that none of these were held off or put into the 5. And one of the 5 is in our category, or in our subject matter here to be rejected and rebid, is fencing. There was one bidder. Makes sense. But drywall and plaster category 7 was $641,459 under budget. Under budget. It's not logical for any district that we've come across to want to rebid a large size category like that made it under budget. This category involves steel. We do the metal framing. It's a volatility. I mean, everybody knows on the news, the tariffs, it's still in place. We held a good pricing on this project, but if you pull this bid, the material costs, the risk it involved in this to rebid it, we don't know the reward. We don't know what that value is in trying to rebid that. There was two of us that were competitive. The other two that were 3 and 4 were $2.5 million over us. If we pulled, how is that going to be competitive? The second guy coming in, is he going to be competitive? So I would like for you guys to vote no on this or make an amendment and pull that category 7 out and rethink this and see the value. What we're going to do is pull public records requests for the review of this project because it didn't make any logical reasoning to reject this bid that was under budget and clearly raises a red flag as to the purpose of the rebid in light of the risk. There's a huge risk, but again, $641,000 under budget. Everybody else was, most were over budget, but yet this sticks out, you know, and we just want to know the fact. Why? My time's up. If I can speak more, I'll continue. About 3 more seconds. And if you have any questions, please ask. You feel free to ask that. There was no time that the CM, you know, bid it January 22nd. I didn't find out till March 15th that it's being rejected. Come to us and say, hey, this has got to be rejected. Hey, there's problems on the drawings or anything that we could help. We've been in the business for 6 with Sierra for 30. I built Heritage High School back in 2007. We built schools for years, many, many years. And it was a very competitive to that number and to beat the budget. We have local supplier is a material supplier out of material supply employees. We have employees. Good. This is being a flag. You know, 1,200,000 over budget. But metal is something on the line. They're not front end items. Okay.
And next we have Ken Coate. I hope I got that right.
Thank you. I live. My address is in Ukaipa. You don't have to worry. I'm the national. Also was community college the oversight committee. There for 2017, I was termed out for $300 million on this. Those bond measures to pass with, as you know, 55, but they're very, it's required. Prop W passed with 55.3, just over 150, which I think would draw your attention to for and one of the roles behind in cost best value. I'm hoping they have a report and they provide this report to you. Responsibility of public agencies and to make sure transparency and in good faith process. You have a you had a pre-qualification process. Sierra Lathing. You might have approved. Local suppliers, local employees. $641,000 less than the next bidder, and almost 5% under. This is one of the only packages that was under budget, and yet for budget considerations, which is what we were bid, risking an increase in the bid price. And I can tell you from my experience, surety person, I see tons and tons of bids, and I'm going to tell you, prices not going down right now. So the risk of this going down is, the risk of this going up is that's more than likely what you're going to see. So Sierra Lathing, they're a 60-year-old company. The best answer is to allow them to provide the value engineering as provided by law. You're allowed to award them the job, allow them to go through the cost savings you want to do, and then you can end up, working with the low bidder in good faith. You also have a responsibility to the next bond measure you're going to pass, because it's a growing area. We're going to have another bond measure, at some point, and being good students or stewards, of that money is just the only way you can get the next one passed. So one quick point on that is when you put this out, you've got so many packages that are way over budget that you're not going to, I don't understand why you would pick theirs to rebid it. The only one that's under budget, and it doesn't pass the smell test. It seems something is wrong there, and it's not really operating in good faith towards somebody who put in a good faith bid. So those are my comments. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, 11.1 consent calendar, approval of consent calendar items. Is there a motion? Mr. Freeman? Mr. Nelson? Any discussion? None? Please vote. Did you have something to say? No, that's an action item. Did I not click on it? So, do I sync it again, or what do I do? Hit refresh. Do I do roll call over again? Join meeting or start the roll call over again? I just clicked refresh. All right, gentlemen, please vote. You voted? Oh. My bad. Item 11.1 is a 4-0 vote. Item 12.1 is an information item, Community Facilities District 92-1, and Certificates of Participation presentation. Item 12.2 is information. Yeah. Well,
Mr. President, can I have the floor for a moment?
You absolutely can.
Why, thank
I apologize.
you. No problem. So as you recall from our last board meeting, we did a lengthy but hopefully you found helpful and necessary facilities financing presentation, because we've got a lot of financings that come following Measure W. So two of those that we said we would follow up with at tonight's meeting was a little bit more in-depth look at the certificates of participation or the COPS financing. It's backed by 92-1, so that'll be the first of the two presentations. And this is a familiar face, I know, Doug Floyd with Copel and Gruber Public Finance. Maybe an unfamiliar face sitting in the, sorry, Lynn Gruber. Used to be familiar, but we kind of let Doug take the lead since he's the familiar face. But they will be doing a presentation so that we can get a little bit more in depth before you make your final decision on the financing, which would come before you next month, which I think is in your final slide. Sorry about that, Doug. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Raines. Good evening, Board President Garcia, Board of Trustees, Cabinet. Again, I'm Doug Floyd. My firm serves as the special tax consultant for the district, which means we administer the district's community facilities districts. So again, I'm going to speak in particular about the Community Facilities District 92-1. And then how that would lead into the proposed certificates of participation issuance. So what we'll cover is just a brief overview of the CFD, existing and past bond issues that were issued by the CFD, our projections as far as taxes and sort of the methodology and how that works, and then getting proposed certificates of participation issuance. So with that, just as a reminder, CFD 92-1 was approved by the registered voters way back in 1992 with the specific purpose of providing financing for school facilities. When that CFD was approved by the voters, there's a particular rates and methodology or provisions that instruct us how to tax properties, when they are taxed. So a property is initially taxed when there is a building permit issued for the residential dwelling unit. So, I mean, a property could be vacant for many years. Once there's a permit issued, then it would be taxed with new housing is taxed about approximately $300 annually, and it's taxed for a period of 40 years, or not to exceed 40 years. Again, the CFD encompassed a very large portion of the district. And we've seen growth around 600 units per year since 2011. So there's a lot of new development that has been taxed. Sure.
The houses that were already in place in 1992, that was the beginning of their 40-year period?
Yes.
So they weren't exempted from it. They were included.
They are included within that at a lower rate. Yeah, so new housing was added. New housing is charged a $300 rate. And again, the new housing would be taxed based on the issuance of that building permit. So thank you for that. So I think there was a question at the last meeting, where is the CFD? So we've provided a map that which shows the CFD boundaries. As you can see, it's sort of in the green, bluish area. It's hard to tell the color. On the aqua? Okay, we'll go with aqua. As you can see, it is almost coterminous with the boundaries of the Menifee Union School District. There are certain areas that were carved out, mostly if the properties were known commercially zoned properties or at the time known senior-only communities. But it does cover a very large geographical boundary of the district. As I mentioned, we've seen a lot of growth in the area as far as new residential development, and we expect that growth to continue. So you can see there's a very steep linear increase in new homes over the course of since 2010-11 tax year. We've seen around 5,000 units added. And similar to the Measure W authorization, when that was approved, there was a certain bond authorization. When the CFD was established or approved by the voters, there was a limited number of bonds that could be issued to be officially supported by the CFD taxes. That was $40 million. Since the CFD was created, there have been 2 bond issues, with the first issuance in 2011. That issuance it had 2 purposes. One, to refund existing 2003 series of certificates of participation, and also to provide new money for facilities. And it used approximately $33.4 million of the $40 million authorization. And then following that, there was a refunding in 2015, which purpose was to refund the 2011 series bonds to provide savings, and it also provided some funding for new facilities, and that used $6.5 million of the authorization. It's a refinancing. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So if there are CFDs, which I'm aware of, there are CFDs established by the minute. Yeah, so they would be overlapping those particular properties. Yeah, I don't remember where all the Menifee CFDs are located, but there are overlapping. So what this slide shows is a projection of the special tax revenues over the course of, I think, 40 years, 50 years. And that projection is based on development through the end of 2018. So what doesn't include any new development that'll come, we expect to come on the line in future years. And just based on those revenue projections and looking at what the existing bond issuance repayments are at this time, the taxes after those bonds are repaid each year would generate about $2 million, and that increases quite substantially, in residual revenues. Do you have a question? That's correct. Yeah, so the way that this CFD is structured, it instructs us to start levying the taxes once that building permit is pulled, regardless of whether it has an occupancy permit or it's in fact sold to individual property owners. They're still paying the taxes. So based on the projection of the revenues, what is required for the annual debt service payments, again, there's a substantial amount of residual revenues. And keeping in mind that the district is capped out at issuing any debt that is officially secured by the CFD taxes, one of the solutions that is proposed is the issuance of certificates of participation. A certificate of participation, or COP, is a non-voter approved debt. It is backed or officially backed by the district's general fund. However, other sources of payments can be used to repay those certificates of participation. Yeah, developer fees, special tax revenues is in this case, and other sources. The district has issued in the past COPs. There's a 2003 series that was issued, and a 2000 issuance, and there's a 2007 issuance that's currently outstanding. There's about $5.7 million in outstanding debt for that one. So the proposed COP issuance would accomplish the following. It would refund the existing 2007 COPs to provide savings to the district. It would leverage the CFD special tax revenues and for the repayment. It would create opportunities for new money, and it would allow the district to complete Liberty High School in one phase. With these types of certificates of participation, that type of debt issuance, it does require a leased asset, which the district is planning to encumber the Paloma Valley High School site, which is really already encumbered by the existing 2007 COP issuance. I believe that's part of the. Yeah, I believe it's a savings based on the interest rates. Okay.
Provides additional. It basically provides additional ability to raise new funds from the existing revenues.
It extends out the payments as well as part of that, bringing in the additional funds.
No, residual revenues are basically the taxes that are levied and collected, and a portion of those taxes are used to pay for the existing debt, the debt payments for the existing bonds, and whatever's left over after those bonds are repaid. To use an analogy that Candace likes to use, if you're trying to buy a house, you can either use a portion of your monthly income and either put it under hopefully not put it under a mattress, but put it in a bank until which time you have enough, you could commit enough funds to pay for the house, or what the proposal is to, similar to a mortgage, is, creating a financing and then using those residual revenues to basically pay off that debt. Well, this is based on existing development. So they're homes that are already being charged. Yeah.
If I could just interrupt, I think that you'll find all of the projections that we do as a finance team are conservative as this is. We could be projecting, future homes and that sort of thing and doing a larger financing. But when we're doing things like projecting assessed valuation, or in this case, we're only looking at homes that already have permits pulled. And that's because we want to be extremely conservative and not overextend ourselves when it comes to debt.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I mean, we are expecting, if we go back to this chart, we're expecting, this is again the number of taxable units added to the CFD. We expect that trend line to continue. So 600 more homes the next year and the next year, which will only add to those residual revenues. And then this table illustrates, if we're looking at the projection of residual taxes, what's required to pay the debt service on the existing bonds, and adding in the proposed 2019 COPS debt schedule, as required by law, there's at least 110% coverage of revenues over the total debt service that is required to be repaid. And you can see sort of towards the end, that coverage gets really high, almost 200%. So this is a very conservative projection or use of the financing. And just to, as Candace alluded to, as far as timeline, the March 18th was the last date to provide notice to the Riverside County of Education. I believe that happened, right? So that occurred. That's in the past. So the next item would be to consider approval of the financing at the April 17th board meeting. If that's approved, then we would, as a financing team, put together or offer to the public what's called an official statement. That's basically a prospectus to the bond market, explaining the mechanism or the intricacies of the COPS debt issuance. And then the pricing would occur on April 29th and with a final close of May 13th. So, any questions? Well, you would, as for the CFD portion, assuming your home was built after 1992, you'd be paying approximately $300 per year for the CFD. Now, as far as the GO bond issuance, I think Scott's presentation might allude to that. Yeah.
And just to clarify, this financing does not tax the homeowners anymore. We're using the taxes that they're already paying through the CFD. So this does not add like a third component.
Right.
This just helps us leverage the money that we already have coming in. Yeah. And that's actually the case for both of the financings we're doing.
Right.
Okay.
To mention about this area where the CFD is located, there are a number of overlapping jurisdictions which have created CFDs over time in this area. So you have, for example, a portion in probably even in the city of Paris, but you have Romoland School District, Menifee Union, you have Riverside County. There's a number of jurisdictions that have overlapping debt in this area. And the one thing I would say is that from a homeowner's perspective, under the Belarus law,
there's an obligation of the administrating issuer to work with the development community to provide disclosure when a homeowner purchases a home, to be aware that these special taxes exist. So that's one issue. So a homeowner should not. Now, obviously, we've all bought homes and we've all had the notary come over to our house with a binder of documents this thick, and those are among the documents. But it is to say that the homeowner is disclosed that these taxes exist. Whether they realize it when they're signing all those papers or not is another matter. I think what has also happened out here since 2008, obviously, is that mortgage underwriting standards have become more strict, and they've worked to try to do a better job of being assured that the homeowners have the ability to pay not only their mortgages but also their underlying taxes. And we can only hope that those underwriting standards are held higher than they were pre-2005.
Well, again, if the district can either accumulate those residual funds, and then as there's enough to pay for facilities, those funds can be used, or the alternative is to issue this 2019 COP issuance, have the proceeds available to complete the Liberty High School, and then use those same residual revenues, again, it's not adding taxes, to repay that debt.
Mr. Stafford, was that your question, or was it what are we going to use the funds are, like which project?
Or which? Oh, I see.
No, not icing. Okay, so may I try to answer that? So I'm going to answer in the reverse order. So this is not money that we can use on anything other than facilities. So if we were, we aren't, but if we were facing a layoff situation, this isn't something we could use instead of, that particular hypothetical example that you gave. If you remember back, if we could go back to our special study session that we had a couple of years ago when we very first talked about, okay, let's go out and explore the feasibility for a bond measure. At that time, we were talking about between the new bond measure and the next series of the previous bond measure, we were at that time talking about $125 million. And this was all, I think in our last month, I think it was the last month's presentation, $125 million. And so at that time, that was not going to allow us to build all of Liberty High School in a single phase. So we went out and looked at this option to see if we could bridge that gap. So to speak. So this along with assessed valuation having grown since we talked 2 years ago, thereby raising the Series C of the last bond measure. So that, along with this, allows us to build Liberty High School in one phase rather than having to have conversations of, like we did at Heritage High School, for those of you that remember you were in the community or here, in your case, Mr. Stafford. The stadium was not part of the original phase. So this became part of the plan, through the various discussions, and how do we bridge that gap? Because that was one thing the Menifee community was pretty adamant, about in terms of supporting the bond. Is they didn't want to have a phased high school. They wanted, a complete. You guys that have been here certainly remember that. So this bridges that gap. It allows us to leverage the money that we have in the residual CFD account to allow us to. Essentially finish the high school in one phase rather than waiting, as an example, for that money to build up to, be enough to pay that bill. Is that?
I do have one question. It says we're going to refund the 2007 COPs. How much do we owe on the 2007 COPs?
There's around $5.7 million
Okay,
in
so
outstanding
we're
debt.
going for $40 million of COPs, so we would have 34.5-ish million to
Exactly.
to use. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, item 13.1, discipline. Nope. It just skipped.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say no.
Yeah, good thing. Okay, what'd you say, 12 point?
So maybe why he's getting to
Yeah, no, yeah, but I'm
Am
reading
I gonna
this.
be advancing?
Yeah, the computer's doing its own thing. Oh my
So
god.
I have to do two things at once.
All right. Yeah.
no 2 agenda items.
To see
So
if
yeah,
I
this
can
is
pull it off.
12.2 now.
So everybody's on 12.2? Okay. 12.2, Assembly Bill 182 and Measure W General Obligation Bonds presentation. Take it away, please.
All right, members of the board, members of the cabinet, Scott Smith, CSG advisors, a municipal advisor to the district on all of these various financings that we are undertaking. And it's very exciting that we're undertaking $148 million GO bond issue. So likewise, this presentation will be exciting. So what I am here to address for you today as background. In 2013, the California State Legislature passed AB 182 to address issues of general obligation, debt obligations that were perceived as overburdening taxpayers. And what they did was that they placed certain limits on the use of compounding interest bonds. As I said, this will be riveting for you. So I'm going to be describing what those are and what the state was meaning to do. And then also to create more transparency regarding these financing structures. So the AB 182 disclosure, it's an analysis of the total overall cost of the bonds that allow for compounding interest, current interest and compounding interest, and I'm going to describe what those are. Compounding interest bonds, which I'm going to refer to in this presentation as CABs, must be sold with 10-year optional calls, and I'm going to explain why that is. A maximum term of 25 years, and then together with the rest of the bonds that are being issued in that particular series of repayment or in that particular election, a total repayment ratio, which is all the debt service you're paying of the bonds, principal and interest, divided by just the principal, which the state determined that the magic number of what that ratio, maximum ratio should be is 4-to-1, incorporating your assessed valuation projections. I'm also going to provide a comparison of what the overall cost of issuing current interest bonds only, and like I said, I'm going to describe what current interest bonds are. The reason the bonds that are allowing for compounding interest are proposed to be issued and sold in this issue. And then finally, because the state was also concerned about school districts understanding the roles that underwriters play in transactions, they also wanted to be assured that the board members were receiving a copy of the underwriters' Rule G17 disclosure, and I'm going to summarize what that disclosure says. So this is the part you've been excited to see. See, we lost a little bit of formatting there. So what I've done here, so this is a chart that shows what are current interest bonds, Sibs, I'm going to call them. I'm going to go back and forth calling them that. I can't help it. And CABs, capital appreciation bonds, which are these compounding interest bonds. And so what I've done here, and just start with looking at the charts. So the first, in both charts, what I did was I created a pretend bond issue of $20 million to show what a typical current interest bond only principal and interest profile might look like, and then a profile of CABs of a similar amount, but having to put them somewhere, putting them on the far end, because what was happening as school districts projected tax revenues to grow, what they were really trying to do is pack very expensive capital compounding interest cabs on the back end of bond issues, which was very expensive and created certain lack of flexibility in future refinancing opportunities that school districts may have to reduce taxes for homeowners. And so what I've done is I've created a sample bond issue that puts cabs sort of on the back end. So in the first example, scenario one, we have sort of a vanilla $20 million bond issue. You can see, as with your home mortgages, the blue is the interest you pay, the reddish maroon is the principal that you pay. And so over time, you know, as with your home mortgage, early years you're paying a lot of interest, not a lot of principal, and then as time goes by you're paying more principal. So in the case of capital appreciation bonds, CABs, these are bonds that defer the payment of interest to investors until those bonds mature. And in the meantime, the interest compounds on a semi-annual basis. So if I sold, in this scenario two, let's say I only sold those bonds, $20 million of bonds, the school district wouldn't pay any principal and interest in years 1 through 20, and then in years 21 through 25, they'd be paying approximately, you know, between 12 and $14 million a year to pay that $20 million off. So in both cases, these are compliant with AB 182. The repayment ratio in the first case is just under 2 times. It's 1.89, and in the case of the second case, the repayment ratio is about 3.29%. So what you can see is what the state was getting at, or were egregious examples of where school districts were, how they were fitting these types of bonds into their financing programs. So what was the state concerned about? They're concerned about the interest cost relative to the principal that's being raised, because the interest cost of CABs is typically much higher than it is for Sibs. Why do school districts issue CABs? They're not evil per se. They are simply a way that if you use them in conjunction with current interest bonds properly, they're an effective tool for you to be able to maximize your financing capacity, because we're always dealing with sort of an expectation of rising assessed value, and we're trying to fit our debt service within our projected line as tightly as possible to raise as much money as possible, because obviously school districts are hard up for dollars for school construction. So are there any questions? I know that's pretty technical stuff, actually. So ready to move on? All right. Okay. Well, there's a test at the end. So a little bit about the history of assessed value in the district. Obviously, it's a district that's gone from, you know, fairly rural. I grew up here. I grew up here starting since the mid 60s, so I've watched the area grow for many years. It saw a sort of a dip with the recession in 2000, you know, starting in 2008. What's very encouraging is that although we've had a dip since 2008, we've had a significant increase since then of assessed valuation, as both, you know, the bottom has been found in the housing market at that time and has actually gone back up, and we've seen new growth in the area. So some of the annual compound growth metrics that we've looked at in terms of looking at our own growth projections, the 10-year growth rate, this is sort of looking at the peak pre-crash to now, is still a fairly robust 4% compound growth rate. 5 years is 7%, in excess of 7%, and in the last year it's grown 9%. The 30-year growth rate is 7.64%. And so what we did at the time that we issued bonds in 2015 for Measure T, we did a second issuance of bonds for Measure T. So Measure T was about $145 million authorization, 152. I just am not doing math in my head appropriately. We issued about 75 million, and we've got about 78 million of remaining authorization. So in issuing the second series of bonds, which we did earlier, part of the same issues with funding that we have now with the state program, what we decided then was to hire an economist to help us look at growth in the area. And we were aware that an economist had been working with Eastern Municipal Water District. I know I told this story last time, but I'm going to tell it again. We had an economist that was looking at growth for Eastern, which overlaps our service area. Their service area overlaps our district, at what they projected growth would be for their capital improvement program. And we said, wouldn't it be great if we asked him, since we're a subset of his model, to help us look at what he would project growth to be in assessed valuation in our district over the next 10 years. And what he had concluded at that time was that he thought we'd have, and his projection went out about 10 years, was he expected year-over-year growth of about 7%. And so since then, we have exceeded that projection. And so the feeling was, if we've already exceeded that projection, there's no reason for him to go and update the analysis. But what we've done here is we've projected, what we've done is we've created a debt service profile to match assessed valuation that grows 6% per year through 2025 and 4% thereafter. And so if you take that growth projection over the term of the bonds, that average compound growth rate is about 4.42%. The historical average in the district has been 7.64%. So we feel like we've stayed below the economist's projection and kept a fairly modest projection, given that we know that this area still has a significant amount of undeveloped property that has yet to be developed. That's right. If we reach that 7%, then that 4% actually would go down. Exactly. I mean, if it goes down, yeah, right. If we, you just look at last year, we went up 9%. We know that everybody's paying a little bit less than $30 per $100,000 out there that are paying, on just that portion of their tax bill. Obviously, they have other tax bill items that they're paying. So this is our debt service profile, and I know it's kind of small, but as part of the disclosure for AB 182, this is our growth projection. This is our debt service profile, and this is how we are staying within. You could see we are trying to stay within the $30 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Any questions about that? And I will say, because the county requires us to, there's also a buffer built into that assessed valuation assumption and a county reserve requirement. So there is a little bit more cushion in there for taxpayers than is reflected on that chart. So this is under AB 182, and I realize it's small. I'm going to point to the aspects of the presentation that are part of the AB 182 disclosure. So the scenario one on the left-hand side is if we were to do a bond issue that only issued current interest bonds, Sibs. And then scenario two is our issue where we're combining Sibs and cabs, which is what our proposed structure is. So in the case of the Sibs only approach, if we were to raise $148 million, you can see I've highlighted in red that we've projected 4 years where we would exceed the $30 per $100,000 limit based on our assessed valuation projections. So the issue, okay, if we tried to wipe out those red years, obviously it would create lower taxes in the bottom years. We'd have 30 years. That's a crimp. That's the crimp in our hose, right? And so we would only be able to raise $100 million instead of $148 million. So scenario 2 is our Sibs and Cabs scenario. And in this scenario, we're raising about $113 million of current interest bonds. We're raising $34 million of capital appreciation bonds, so a modest amount as relates to the total bond issue. All of those cabs are being issued within 25 years, which was required. All of the bonds will be sold with a standard 10-year prepayment provision. So in other words, we can't refund these bonds for savings for 10 years. That's a pretty standard requirement of municipal bonds to have a 10-year lockout from prepayment. The AB 182 requires that capital appreciation bonds that are issued by school districts have call ability. That is something that the market underwriters would have told you that you had to pay a lot more in interest costs to pay for that callability, but the feeling was of the state was that without the callability, that didn't give you the opportunity to provide, basically crossed off the opportunity for you to ever provide savings to taxpayers. Exactly. In any case, the other thing I want to point out here is there's not that much difference in interest cost between these two scenarios. The interest cost of scenario 1, about 4.28%. The true interest cost of our combined Sibs cabs is 4.34%. We are still in a period of historically low interest rates, so these are all great stories. I don't think no matter how you shake it. The average life of each issue is one's 22 years on a 30-year issue. The other is 21 years. Not a lot of differentiation. The repayment ratio, which the state was concerned about, in both cases is just slightly over 2. So the Sibs only is about 2.01. The repayment ratio for the Sibs cab combination is 2.06. Very far below the state standard that was established. So I'm also supposed to say the reason why, and I think it's obvious, the reason why we are using cabs in this structure is simply to stay within the $30 per $100,000 assessed valuation limit, and yet still raise $148 million in bonds. Any questions? Good question. So under federal tax law, the last big tax bill eliminated our ability to refund bonds on an advance basis. So we can only do it. It used to be that you could go out like 7 years. You could perhaps, if interest rates were low enough, you could refund those bonds on an advance basis one time. If you're refunding bonds on a current basis, that means within 30 days of whenever the bonds are callable, and these bonds will be callable any day after 10 years. On a current basis, you can do it as many times as you want. You just have to decide, how many times do you want to pay guys in suits to do transactions. So. And usually what you do is you set, we typically set refunding standards that say, I'm only going to refund bonds if I can at least achieve this much savings. So the last part of AB 182 disclosure is about the Stiefel has been engaged by the district to serve as the underwriter for the bonds. So the G17 letter, I'm just giving some summary aspects of the letter. This is on file. Staff can provide a copy if you want to examine it closer, but basically it designates Stiefel as the underwriter. It describes Stiefel duty as one of fair dealing, not as a fiduciary to the district. So in my role as your municipal advisor, I'm a fiduciary to the district. That means I put your financial interests above my financial interests, whereas Stiefel has not a fiduciary duty, but a duty of fair dealing with you. It acknowledges that their interests as a bond underwriter differ from the district's, but that they have a duty to purchase and sell the securities at a price that is reasonable and fair. And then as part of, this is part of 182, this is one of the things that was required is that that the underwriters provide, additional, basically the same speech, but in paragraph form of what I'm giving you, which is considerations regarding the issuance of capital appreciation bonds as such are considered by some to be complex municipal securities. So that's the summary of the G17 letter. Finally, I'm just giving a little update on schedule. So at this meeting, you're getting the AB 182 disclosure. You're going to do later the first reading of the district issuance resolution, which is later on the agenda. Then we'll come back next month for the second reading and approval of the issuance of the, that should not be Series B bonds, but it should be the 2019 Series A bonds and the financing documents. You'll remember the last time I was here, we were having you approve a resolution where we asked the state for a waiver on our tax limit. So that is on target to be reviewed and approved by the CDE the week of May 8th. So shortly thereafter, we'll go out to the market and we'll pre-price and price the bonds the week of May 20th and close the week of June 3rd. I will say, just to mention on the COPs, we submitted the RCOE package. They will also, that will be reviewed by the county, and they'll weigh in if they think that the district will have a problem with repaying those bonds, and we think that we don't think that they'll have a problem with that. So that's it. Any questions? I know that was a lot. That's right.
We got a POS and an OS, and we got all kinds of acronyms.
It's not only the military that uses acronyms for everything.
So thank you. These are this is a required presentation in order to move on to the next steps. We know that they're lengthy and full of a lot of information, but as Scott mentioned in the beginning, the state was concerned about boards taking action on things without understanding the difference in Sibs and caps and all of the things we just mentioned. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, 113.1, right? Okay, 13.1. All right, item 13.1 is the information item, discipline, February 2019 monthly suspensions report. 14.1 is an action item. I'm on the right one, 14.1, okay. Sorry, we had some glitches in the software, so I got to double check. Item 14.1 is an action item, personnel, certificated personnel action items. Is there a motion? Freeman and Mr. Nelson. Any discussion? No? Please vote. Item 14.1 is a 4-0 vote. 14.2 is another action item, personnel, classified personnel action items. Is there a motion? Mr. Stafford, is there a second? What's so funny? Any discussion? Please vote. Item 14.2 is a 4-0 vote. Item 14.3 is another action item. Okay, so I do the public hearing now. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees hold a public hearing to receive comments regarding the initial proposal to negotiate from the Paris Secondary Educators Association for the 2019-2020 year. The time is 7:27 and we're open for public comments. Any comments at this time? No? All right, we're gonna play the waiting game for a few seconds here. Time is 7:28. Public hearing is now closed. Item, what? My bad, I'm sorry, I got excited. There it is. Sorry, I scrolled down the screen. Mr. Nilsson, Mr. Freeman, any discussion? None? Please vote. Item 14.3 is a 4-0 vote. Next item is a action item, public hearing. The Paris Union High School District submits attached, read it out loud, huh? No way. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees hold a public hearing to receive comments regarding the district initial proposal to negotiate with the Paris Secondary Educators Association for the 2019-2020 school year. The time is 7:29. Open for public comments. Public hearing. Any comments? Please come forward. Thank you. We need like Jeopardy music or something. And cancel that. Time is 7:30. Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? All right. Mr. Nelson and Mr. Freeman. Any discussion? None? Please vote. What just happened? Okay. Okay, item 14.4 is a 4-0 vote. Okay. Item 14.5 is another action item. Public hearing, right? Is that another public hearing? Anna, is that another public hearing? Oh, it's a TA, so no. Yeah, the tentative. Okay, 14.5, personnel approval of tentative agreement between the Paris Union High School District and the California School Employees Association and its chapter Paris Valley 469 regarding the 2018-2019 reopener negotiations. Is there a motion? Mr. Freeman and Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? None at this time. Please vote. Item 14.5 is a 4-0 vote. Item 14.6 is another action item. Building and Grounds ratification of agreement with LSA Associates Incorporated for the Cultural Resources Monitoring Program of the Liberty High School project, funded through the various facility funds at a total cost not to exceed $130,428,000. Oh, no, are you sure?
Yep.
I'm gonna go with what Mr. Bennett said, not the general fund. All right, is there a motion? Mr. Nelson, Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? None? Please vote. Want to come over? My computer, it's tripping again.
There you go, call for the vote.
All right, one more time. Call for the vote. Oh, wait, no, wait. Who made the motions? And then Mr. Stafford, that's right. Okay, one more time. Call for the vote, please. Oh, yeah, there we go. Item 14.6 is a 4-0 vote. Item 14.7 is an action item, building and grounds. Ratification of award of bids for 27 categories and rejection of bids for 5 categories for the Liberty High School funded project, funded through the various facilities funds in the amount of, okay, no, just double check. $104,313,525, not the general fund. Is there a motion? Mr. Nelson, is there a second? Mr. Freeman? So now is the time? Before we vote, we have a presentation.
So knowing that we would have a couple speakers here tonight, and this is a large project, and I know that there are some questions, we invited Ron Keel from Neff Construction. He's the Chief Operations Officer, just to walk through what the process looks like when we're bidding a large high school, what are the considerations, his team, Hector's team, my team, what we go through in terms of analyzing bids and so forth. So I'd like to ask Ron to come up. We'll have to stretch our necks up just a little bit, though.
Thank you, Candace. Board President Garcia, board members, Superintendent Bennett, cabinet, and staff, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you here tonight. There were several issues raised by Sierra Lathing regarding the bids for Category 7 I want to speak to. But before I get into the specifics, I wanted to talk about some more positive aspects of the project. When we went out to bid for the job, we invited 254 contractors and received bids from 143 of those that were invited, and that was for a total of 33 categories. This is a really large project, one of the largest in the valley. I think Chino has a high school that's underway or under bidding, and other than yours, these are the 2 largest projects in the Inland Empire for schools that we're aware of. So they're very attractive projects, yours in particular here in this valley. We received just under 5 bids per category, which demonstrates good bid coverage, good interest in your job, good competitive bidding for each of those categories. Fencing, which is one of the categories we're recommending to reject bids for, only had 1. We know we can do better than that, and we have some changes that we believe will reduce the cost for that category. But other than that, we had very good coverage in the categories. But since we are over budget, and as your CM, we're obligated to dig deep into the project. We conduct post-bid interviews with the low bidders and sometimes the second and third low bidders, try to figure out where some of the costs lie, particularly if we are surprised by some of the costs. I know you're well aware of the fact that the earthwork bid was over budget, and there were some significant additional information provided to the bidders on that category, which you've already awarded, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's centered around the amount of rock that was to be discovered on the site. The initial reports were silent with regards to some of the rock. We knew, just from experience in this valley, that there was considerable rock. You could see the rock out there. And we discussed with the district, and they authorized to have your soils engineer do some additional testing, which did in fact show there's considerably more rock to deal with. And therefore those prices went up because the bidders could see exactly what they had to deal with out there. So similarly, we have these 5 categories that we're recommending you reject. Fencing, one bidder, we believe we can attract more. We're gonna make some, architects are gonna make some design changes to further reduce the costs. We have the site concrete, similar thing there. We have some work in there that we believe is unnecessary and doesn't detrimentally affect the function of the campus. So the architect has agreed to, with his assistance, he's gonna remove some of these items from the plans or modify them to save you money in that category as well. With regards to roofing, same thing. There's gonna be some scope revisions made that we believe will save upwards of $1 million in that category alone. With regards to gypsum and plaster specifically, this is not an issue about Sierra Lathing and Neff. This has nothing to do with any kind of a personal issue. We're currently working with Sierra Lathing on 3 projects, 2 in the Irvine district, 1 in Rialto, and those jobs are going fine. We have a 40-year standing relationship with this firm. So it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with attempting to save the district money. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to you to do that. And we're making this recommendation to reject these in attempts to capture in excess of $2 million over these 5 categories. So, also with regards to category 7, they are being selected as one to rebid, partially because of the size of the contract. They have the 2nd largest contract of all 33 at $13 million, second only to the electrical, which is at about $20 million. The categories that we're recommending approval of were vetted to see if there was areas where we could reduce costs, and some have offered some value engineering options that we're recommending the district take and that I believe they will, but they're minor components. If we tinker with and make major changes to the electrical systems, you either can't plug in your devices, you don't have your wireless access points, things like this, which in the team's opinion would detrimentally affect the functionality of the school. Many of the categories, such as masonry and the 2 structural concrete categories, contain work that is vital to approval through the state. So to change those kind of designs would require a complete redesign, recalculation, go back to the state, a lengthy process that the project just cannot afford. So this isn't anything about singling anybody out personally. This is about targeting the 5 categories where we believe we can make a significant financial impact, savings to the district, with the most minimal impact to the functionality of the school. That's all I have for you. Any questions?
I just want to confirm what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
You're assuring us that you can get lower bidders for those projects. That's
correct. In the case of category 7, the architect is going to make some design modifications to help reduce the cost. In addition to that, of all the categories that we bid, we feel very confident that the plans are good. I can personally attest to you that in the 30 years I've been doing this, this is one of the best sets of plans I've ever seen. I was personally involved in the development of them. I drew plans myself for 10 years on school projects. So I believe I can make that statement. They're very good plans. In an attempt to improve the safety of your project, the architect, once the plans were approved and while we were out to bid, attempted to include what's called the drift joint for your project. Drift joints are contained on the exterior wall of the building, and the concept is in the event of a significant earthquake that as the building is shaking, that the skin moves independent of the steel frame. So we don't have windows falling out and things like this. So they attempted to upgrade the project, because as you recall, the plans were approved several years ago. And they wanted to bring this up to what is a more current code. They weren't required to do that. They just felt that was in your best interest. So it's a complex set of details. They didn't have them all covered. In the minor amount of time they had to attempt to make this incredibly vast change, they picked up all the structural details, but they didn't have the architectural details. So we know there's a significant hole in the plans there, and we're concerned about bringing change orders to you to fix that. That's going to be rectified as part of this rebid. So there may be some additional cost that wasn't included in their bid. I can't say, can't speak to that, but I'm fairly confident that there would be, and I'd prefer not to be standing here before you explaining these huge change orders that I knew about prior to award. Yes, sir. Dr. Freeman?
If the bid's rejected,
Yes.
you're not just going out for rebidding on the same design and everything.
No, sir.
So there's gonna be changes made.
Changes made.
So that you're basically bidding on a different.
New set of drawings,
new
that is
set of drawing,
correct.
Okay,
And rescoping work.
and these changes are not gonna make a difference as far as the safety or any of that?
No, sir.
Okay.
These are minor cosmetic type changes, minor structural changes. Some will require DSA approval, but they just do that through the addendum process, and they're doing that anyways. And I'd also like to point out to you in closing that your documents specifically state that you have the right to reject bids, all bids, or rebid or not rebid. So this is information that was available to Sierra Lathing and all the other bidders. It's common in school projects. It gives you that authority based on your financial situation, whether you even want to move forward with the project. So you are within your legal rights absolutely to reject any of your own bids.
So if I'm picturing this right in a simplistic way and not using a sports analogy, it'd be like having a 57 Chevy and taking the fins off. I mean, it looked cool with it, but it wasn't necessary to have the.
I think it would be more like taking the chrome trim off the side.
Okay. Thank you.
More minor than taking the fins off.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
I like him.
So,
okay. So I just think that the understanding is, okay, you did say that all the bidders understand that the bids can be rejected for
any and all reasons.
Any reasons. What about the statement that it wasn't until Friday that they were aware of the change?
When we go through our analysis of the bids, we're generally not negotiating with the prime contractors as to whether or not they want us to rebid. They generally do not. And I don't blame Sierra Lathing for wanting to hold on to this contract. I would too if it was mine. It's a $13.5 million contract. It's a lot of work for them. But we have to look beyond that. So again, it's not about Sierra Lathing. It's about what's in the best financial interest of the district. We're hopeful, in addition to the 4 other Category 7 contractors that I personally contacted and have made a commitment of their interest to want to rebid, we're hopeful that Sierra rebids it as well. There's nothing that precludes them from rebidding the job. And if he's low, we'll be here making a recommendation to you for Sierra Lathing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I had a couple of questions. When I looked at it, you were removing things such as a single coat of primer on drywall, things like that.
Correct.
And I also understand you covered a lot of things when you said that these will prevent change orders in the future, which will cost us a lot of money. But my question may not necessarily be for you, but the oversight committee was mentioned, and this might be for you, Candace. Could you touch on that? And are they aware, and are they involved in this also?
So the oversight's responsibility is to look at expenditure reports, any contracts that they want. We have, Hector, do you remember when our last meeting was with them? January. Okay, thank you guys. Was in January. If you recall, at the last board meeting, you authorized a resolution to combine Measure T and Measure W. So we're currently in the process. In fact, we have that on our agenda for this week to get those applications ready to go out. So the short answer is no, they're not aware of this. But even if we had that new committee in place, they wouldn't be until the board. So the board first has to make their approval on this. So the Citizens Oversight Committee sees everything after the fact. They're not approving things before it comes to the board. Their primary, and Kerrigan, I know you are out there. I may need your help with this a little bit. In terms of the Citizens Oversight Committee authority is primarily to make sure that we are spending the dollars according to what the project list was that was within the bond documents that went out to the taxpayers. Kerrigan, maybe you can say that a little bit differently for me.
They're charged with reviewing the expenditures of bond proceeds that have been made, the allocation of the bond proceeds to projects, and ensuring that they were the authorized projects, and then forming their own opinion, their own conclusion about the propriety of those expenditures and informing the public of their determinations. So they don't really look at an expenditure before
And I
do it
didn't.
after the fact. And if something was challenged and changed, it would be a process of reallocating other funds to cover it. So they're not usually approving expenditures before they're made.
And in the off chance you don't remember, because I just called him by first name out of the audience. He literally just blew in the door off an airplane that was 3 hours late. But Kerrigan Bennett is our attorney, our bond counsel. So this is his area of expertise.
We've had some discussion about being updated more regularly during the construction. So we're spending a lot of money here, and we want to stay updated more than just once a month meeting. That's just not going to be able to give us the knowledge we need to make these decisions a few days, and we're looking at quite a bit of information. So we'll solve that ourselves, of course, but
I think we can help you with that, Mr. Stafford. We are in the process of preparing an executive summary that we want to send to cabinet that they can then share with you, portions, all of which could be posted on your webpage, however you want to do that. We've got the live cam that we just set up, as quickly as we could. And so we'll work with cabinet and staff to figure out what it is you need, and we'll be happy to provide that data.
okay. And just to be sure, you're confident the price tag will go down? I mean, according to Sierra Lathing, they're 640 under budget, and we'll go down further.
If I can make a quick
Is
comment.
that accurate?
It is. If I can make a quick comment with regards to the budgets for the categories were established prior to your bond even being sized and going out for election many, many months ago. And a lot has happened in that amount of time. It's at least 6 months ago. Partly because of the way the election went down, where initially it appeared to have failed and then slowly crept up, and last minute it was approved, and then we got the word to get out to bid. There wasn't a lot of time to pull all this together for a project of this size. We still had work to do. I didn't focus so much on those budgets because those budgets are provided, but they're not a requirement to provide it all. You don't have to tell anybody anything. You just put the plans out to bid. We like to give the bidders an idea of what is the magnitude of the scope of work. Is Sierra Lathing's Category 7 a 1.3 million or 13 million? It matters to them because of their bonding capacity, whether or not they can pursue a job that size. So I don't get too hung up on revising that as we go. It's close enough. Okay. He's right. He is under that original proposed budget. Things changed over time. The architect removed some scope of work. I didn't go back and adjust them. So I don't put a lot of emphasis in that, and he's right. Although he's under budget, the overall project is not. So when it gets to that point, in our view, everything is fair game. Okay. We're not singling anyone out. We're just looking for where are there opportunities to save money. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, now, they showed up today, and I don't know if they're still here or not. Okay, so they're hearing what you're saying, and
Yes.
they know that you're looking at saving another $2 million, so to speak.
Over 5 categories.
Okay, is this information going to be provided to the competitive bidders?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yes.
it's not like they make out anything by showing up to the meeting.
No, the plans are reissued and a new addendum will be issued, addendum 8, that will include all of these scope revisions for all the categories that are rebidding. So it'll be a even playing board, playing field, I guess, for all the bidders.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So any more discussion from the Board of Trustees?
Yeah, this is an action item, so
Yeah,
we have to decide on this now.
I know. Say so everybody could hear.
that one that's being disputed, it's all of them.
Right. Okay. All right, so no more discussion? All right, gentlemen, please vote. If it works. Let's try it again. Please. You want to come back?
You sure you're not getting a stipend?
Just refresh.
Refresh. And then join meeting when it comes up. We've already all voted, so you should.
You have to put him on salary.
Okay.
I can't be on the board and on salary at the same time.
Oh, gee.
All right, item 14.7 is a 4-0 vote. Let's move along. Item 14.8 is an action item, business approval of the 2018-19 second interim financial report with the positive certification of the Paris Union High School District's financial condition.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Trustee Garcia, board.
Do we need a? I'm starting. Remember, I'm starting. Are we just doing? Yeah, we need to have a motion first before we can open.
Is there a motion?
For discussion.
Yeah, before we go to discussion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Nelson, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stafford?
Sorry.
The
Okay,
floor is yours, ma'am.
so I'm not going to be as riveting as the previous speakers. And
Thank
I know
you.
that you've gotten a lot of financial information tonight, so keep this pretty short. So tonight, we're going to talk about the second interim. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. So tonight, we're going to talk about the second interim report and some of the changes that occurred from the first interim that was built off the initial budget that was approved back in June. Okay. Candace, you want to say a few words?
Sorry, we got a little bit out of sync with some other stuff, people going on. So just, I wanted to real quick, because there was some comments made, regarding the budget. So, when we look at our timelines, the California state budget, the State Budget Act that was adopted in June is what we initially built our budget and multi-year, projections on. You remember then that we had money in the reserves, particularly to open, Liberty High School. At first interim, we came back and we had rebuilt the budget based on, that State Budget Act, but then also things that we knew that happened within our district. We talked about our special education costs that had gone up. We talked about our unduplicated pupil count that had gone down, which impacted our supplemental and concentration dollars. We talked about, at that time, we had settled then with our employee groups, so that was in the budget, as well as we developed a goal for attendance and then increased the revenue, but then also talked about if it didn't look like we would meet those goals, we would need to talk about a contingency plan. Right now, we're kind of right on the cusp of what our goal was, for this year for attendance. So what we're going to see, Alicia's just going to give a brief overview of what's in and what's out of the California state budget, because I really want you guys to look at our multi-year projection. And so you're going to see that any excess dollars, we're now putting back into the reserves. We can build that up. So we want to be able to open Liberty High School, of course. But because we're right on the edge of perhaps meeting our attendance goal and perhaps not, and we've sent out our budget allocations, total dollars to our school sites, to our departments, we did implement some of our contingency plan for that first year because we don't know. And it's easier to give than to take away after the start of the school year. So we're just now beginning those conversations with our school sites. It sounds like maybe that message isn't getting out there quite the way that it should, and we will work on that. I was glad to hear Miss Mueller, talk, say that they wanted to talk about that with us in our PRC on Thursday. So as Alicia said, you had a lot of financial presentations, so she's going to go over the highlights for you, but I just wanted to give you that kind of brief overview and address some of the things we'd heard.
So, as you know, we have a new governor this year, but Prop 98 has continued to grow. This is like over a 3-year period, roughly over $2 billion a year. And we're going to talk about how those increases impact the budget of what he's proposing. So for the local control funding formula, he increased the statutory COLA for 1920. And so he proposes to use part of that growth, $2 billion of it specifically, to fund that increased COLA. And then with that 1920 LCFF growth, it provides an average per pupil funding estimate of about $343 per ADA. And of course, that's going to vary from district to district. Okay. And just like in prior years, no COLA has been given to TIG or transportation or the Economic Recovery Target grant. Those have stayed static since 11/12. So some of the changes that we did discuss. So in first interim and second interim, the changes for 18-19, the COLA stayed the same, obviously. So for 19-20 and 2021, the COLA has gone up, and they were applied to the LCFF, special education, some other categorical programs, and the mandated block grant. So as Candace said, the increased COLA is what we would be putting into the ending fund balance to help save to open up Liberty High School to pay for the things that the construction funds can't, like people and normal startup costs of paper and pencils and that type of thing. So one of the other things that changed in the budget is the governor wanted to give districts relief of the continual increase into STRS. So, but the LAO, which is the Legislative Analyst's Office, is recommending to the legislator that they don't give that increase to school districts quite yet, that they kind of set it aside and then give it to us once we have another economic downturn, which they're projecting a mild one in 2020. So we'll see what gets approved in the ultimate budget, and we'll know more at the May revise. Yes, sir. No. So PERS continues to go up. We'll go over that in a little bit. One of the other things too with this new governor is, so districts have gotten kind of used to having these one-time funds. You know, that's kind of like the icing for the general fund, you know, to fund some of those things that, you know, have been on the wish list for quite a while, or to, you know, do one-time incentives or things of that nature. But he has not put anything into the budget as of yet for any type of one-time funds. And so for our specific second interim calculations, it's pretty similar to the first interim with slight changes, just because there was, by the time we certified our CalPADs, there was a child difference in both categories in enrollment and unduplicated, so it changed the numbers slightly. But for the most part, our average LCFF funding remains the same. And those numbers, like for 7-8, the 9,653, or for 9-12, 11,477, that's if every child came to school every day and they qualified for the supplemental and concentration. The children that don't qualify for that, then we get the reduced funding. So again, our budget was built off of keeping the boards and the district goals of meeting the attendance. Specifically for this year, the 93.18%. When we looked at P1 to P1 from prior year to this year, we were down some, and the sites have been holding Saturday schools and trying to recoup some of that data, or some of that ADA rather. Our P2 cutoff is this Friday, and even though they have Saturday schools planned for after that, we can still recoup anything that happened before March 22nd, and we'll file revised P2 at that time. So we'll know more on Friday, how close we actually are and how much more we need to ramp up trying to meet those goals. And then in the out years, the same, you know, the budget was built on the goals of increasing ADA. And of course, you know, ADA, this is what we receive the majority of our funding, but for me and my department, it's not just about the dollars. If the kids are here, then they're learning and they're achieving more academically, having higher graduation rates, and getting out of those red marks on our dashboard. So as you can see, the CalPERS rates did not change, and when we bring in more years, it continues to go up to nearly 30%. So here's what the multi-year looks like. Just a couple things I want to point out. I pointed this out at first interim too. In 1920, you'll see the contributions go down by a little over $500,000. That is a one-time savings. We'll be utilizing all the ending fund balance that special ed has available, such as Medi-Cal and MA and mental health, in order to help reduce our contribution for that 1 year. You can see in the following year, it goes up by about $1.9 million, just because special ed, as we kind of discussed during the first interim, is continuing to grow, and it's not just our district, it's statewide. But as you can see too, our ending fund balances did increase from what was in first interim, and that is because of the increase in the COLA and decrease in the STRS. So what we're recommending is that you certify that we're a positive certification, and the governors may revise will be in late May, and then we'll present to you in June the adopted budget. Any questions? Well, it's better now. They have to pass it by June, right? I remember one year they didn't pass it till October. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, at this time, calling for a vote. Yeah, we already made the motions. It didn't pop up. Yeah, hit refresh. All right, item 14.8 is a 4-0 vote. Next item is an action item 14.8, technology award of E-rate services agreement with Gigacom for purchase of category 2 equipment switches funded through the general fund in the amount of $158,517.94. Yeah. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Freeman and Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? None? All right, go ahead and vote, gentlemen. Item 14.9 is a 4-0 vote. Next item is an information item. A public hearing will be held pursuant to Education Code Section 47605, Section B, for the Board of Trustees to consider the level of support of teachers employed by the district, other employees of the district, and parents for the charter petition submitted to establish the Sky's the Limit Charter Academy. There is no physical impact to this item. We will now convene to a public hearing on Sky's the Limit Charter Academy charter petition under Education Code Section 47605. The board must hold a hearing to consider the level of support for the petition by teachers employed by the district, other employees of the district, and parents. As part of this public hearing, Candace Rain, Deputy Superintendent of Business Services, will outline the standard for reviewing charter petitions and briefly describe the district process for reviewing the Sky's the Limit Charter Academy charter petition. Ms. Rains, I will now turn it over to you to provide this description, please.
So I'll provide the board with an overview of the Sky's the Limit charter petition, an outline of the general standard for reviewing charter petitions, and address the purpose of tonight's public hearing. The Sky's the Limit Charter Academy, that you can see many of them sitting out here. Thank you for being here. They submitted the petition to the district on February 15th of this year. The purpose of their petition, or their charter, they propose to operate a blended learning program for students in kindergarten through 12th grade that would include classroom-based and virtual-based program with a focus on STEAM. The charter school also proposes to add a preschool program beginning in its second year of operation. As required by the Education Code, the district is holding tonight's public hearing to consider the level of support for the charter petition by teachers, other employees, and parents or guardians of the community. The district is required, and we've already begun this process because we've had this again since February 15th, to analyze the charter petition for legal sufficiency based on very specific criteria that are listed in the Education Code. following tonight, the board will be provided with an evaluation of the petition and a recommendation for the board's consideration as to whether the petition should be granted or denied. So what that means is, we've had this petition, we're reviewing it from all, different, aspects in terms of, their governance structure, student admissions, discipline, educational program, their budget, that sort of thing. So we're going to be continue doing this thorough review, and then make a recommendation to you by way of resolution that will take place at your next regularly scheduled board meeting, which is in April. So again, tonight is just the public hearing. We did invite the petitioners here to make a presentation. So that's my update or summary.
Thank you, Mrs. Raines. As part of this public hearing, petitioners may next make a presentation and or provide statements to the board regarding the charter petition for no more than 10 minutes. Following the presentation and or statements made by the petitioners, the board may hear comments from teachers and other employees, parents, guardians, and any members of the public who desire to speak on this matter. This matter will then come back to the board for a final action at the regularly scheduled April 17th board meeting. I would now like to invite the petitioners forward.
Good evening, Mr. President and board members and superintendent. We are Sky's the Limit Charter Academy. We are K through 12 school that we would like to open here in the city of Paris. And for the past 2 years, we have been putting together and laying the foundation for our charter school. We do have team members with over 263 years of expertise and experience in this field. We have administrators, directors, educators, business, financial personnel, and many more that support our school. We are members of the community. We enter the parades. We have 3 generations of people within our foundation that have graduated from Paris High School, Lake Paris, and CMI. We are highly involved in the community. We know the students in the community, and we see there is a need in the community. We feel that our program, the blended program of both the brick and mortar component and the virtual, will suit the students here in Paris. It is much needed. We have spoken to many parents. We've heard many needs. We've even listened to many of the recordings of the board members here throughout the last couple of years as well. We've taught in this community as well. And we would like you to consider the petition. We have it here before you. In the petition, you will find our school foundation and all the components in compliance thereof. We also have 200 signatures from parents in the community that have supported our school. We do also have a thumb drive with the petition there for you in case you'd like to review it on your laptop for virtual. And we would also like to share a little bit of our school structure with you. We're going to start with our curriculum. Ms. Taylor.
So our teaching sessions are going to focus on helping students grasp the concepts that they need to know in order to perform well in their classes. We have adopted a philosophy of not teaching students what to know, but how to arrive at their own decisions. And you do that through logic, rhetoric, and prudence. And so within our structure and within our curriculum, we look to plan to teach students how to critically analyze material, how to evaluate, how to be able to present themselves, how to be able to back up what they're presenting with facts, with data, so that they can be productive members in the community once they graduate, so that they can pursue college careers in that pathway if they desire, or they can pursue a career pathway if they desire, or go straight into the job force. And so those skills that they will learn in addition to the academic skills, the life skills, so that they can be productive members of the community is what our goal is and our strive to do with that. We plan to use inquiry-based teaching and learning with a growth mindset so that we look to students' strengths and that we foster those strengths and we encourage those strengths. We provide rigor in our curriculum that the students will be able to, excuse me, I've got that cold that's going around, that they will be able to proceed to increase their knowledge base, that they'll be able to perform academically, and then they'll be able to perform on a level with their life skills as well. You'll see we've chosen a curriculum called Acellus, which is a curriculum that provides a high-quality content that can be delivered in a way that supports the student-centered learning. Acellus has built-in visual aids, it has multimedia, it has interactive tools, technology-based, so that students have opportunities to be online and even in the brick and mortar to also be online. We know that students in this century and beyond are becoming more and more tech savvy, maintaining their interest and differentiating curriculum and instruction so that they can be provided those various opportunities is what we've looked at and is what we're researching and continuing to do through professional learning communities that we'll have within the school to evaluate our processes, to collect the data as we continue, as the students are continuing in the learning. Acellus provides curriculum in various areas to cover our students that are high achieving, to be able to work with students that are low achieving. It has live teacher monitoring, which allows the teachers to reach like every student, that they can see real time where students are working. It also has diagnostics within it, so that empowers the teacher with the data and the interventions that can come about right away, and so that they can then group students for intervention for some of the lack of knowledge that they might have in their prior knowledge, to fill the gaps so that we can continue to bring them up to standards. There are also CTE courses, which is a large component of our program that Ms. Morales will talk back about in the transition program that we would like to be providing to students and their families as well. There are also courses within Acellus that called Discover English that will help for our ELL learners and those who need to become proficient in English and be able to be reclassified. You'll also see that we do plan on effective planning for the student learners. So for our students who are academically low achieving, we plan on using our multi-tiered support system, our MTSS system, and universal design for learning, so that we can provide students and teachers. We'll be using access to supports at the tier 1 level for all students, and then progressing through the system as students need additional support provided.
Gina, do you want to advance the slides to keep, I know you guys are following your presentation.
Sorry. So we also have a plan for learners who are academically high achieving and working with STEAM and providing additional opportunities for those students. There are AP courses within Acellus. There are A through G courses that aligned to the California schools and colleges that are within that program as well, so that we'll be able to have those students the opportunities that they need in order to learn. Then we also, our English language learners, as I said, we want to ensure, and our goal is to ensure that English language learners acquire that full proficiency in English as rapidly and effectively as possible, and that they can attain that parity with native speakers in English. To ensure that the English language learners within a reasonable time period achieve the same rigorous grade level academic standards that they're expected of all students. Acellus also has some classes and courses that are in Spanish, so while students are still gaining in those skills in those areas, there are some courses, for example, pre-algebra and an Algebra 1 course that are also taught in Spanish, so that they'll have some opportunities to be able to continue to gain their English proficiency skills and still be having access to that curriculum as well. And special education, also we recognize our responsibility to enroll and support students with disabilities who can benefit from the programs and who'd otherwise qualify for enrollment. Special education has been close to my heart as a special education specialist, and working almost 20 years with special education students and students with special needs, as well as exceptional students. We strive constantly to focus, like I said before, on a growth mindset to help students identify the strengths that they have and to enhance those strengths, provide them curriculum that enhances those strengths. We look at the mantra of you might not be able to do it yet. That doesn't mean you won't ever be able to do it. And so the prudence piece comes into play too, as the fortitude and perseverance that students maintain, and we encourage them in order to keep striving toward their goals and the goals that they want to reach.
So one of the pieces of our foundation school is the transition department, and we've gone around to some of the businesses here in the city of Paris as well as Marina Valley. We've talked to the supervisors, and we are able to place our students in internships, workability, job credit, job shadowing, and of those nature if they would like to take a career track. We've also are very familiar with the UC system as well as the local college, and we are prepared to place our 11th and 12th grade students in those job sites or at those colleges and give them those foundational skills that they need. That's really important. We're finding that the students in our community don't have those basic skills that they really need, and this is why this department is so critical to the foundation of the school in the city of Paris, because we want our students to grow. Just like we see the beautification of the city of Paris, we want our students to continue to grow. We have some phenomenal bright students that we saw today. They are just beautiful. We saw the glimpses of the schools that you have here, but we want all of our students and our children in the city of Paris to continue to grow after they leave our schools in the school system with those skills, and that's why this is important. We also have the student support department. Now, this department is critical because the student support personnel will have a caseload of students, and if a student hits a GPA of a 2.0 or starts to go a little lower, they have low attendance, they need a little help with community resources, and we're talking about the family unit, not just the student themselves. This person will call the family unit, okay, what do you need? How can I help? What's going on? Because not all of our students are learning in the same way. So we are prepared to help them, to place them, to teach them those self-advocacy skills. Okay. And so thank you today. Are there any questions?
I do have one question. You said that you're going to blend the brick and mortar with the virtual. Where do you propose to have the brick and mortar location? Do you have a spot picked out in mind, or are you searching out locations? I'm curious as to where you guys intend to have your school.
We would like to have the school setting, the brick and mortar component here in the city of Paris. We have looked at different locations, and we have not chosen any yet. We do need our petition to be affirmed in order to proceed further.
Okay.
And of course, the virtual component is online, and we do plan to give our students laptops.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How many students do you plan on providing for or servicing?
The first year will be very low in comparison to everybody else, 400 students, and then we would like to grow steadily from there. It's very important to lay that foundation with that small group of students to start with.
Any more questions?
400 students over 13 classes. You're hoping to have 35 kids per grade level-ish?
Approximately, yes.
Any other questions? Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
blessed evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. The public hearing on the Sky's the Limit Charter Academy petition is now closed at 8:20. And we didn't get any more cards, right? Okay. Right. We did not receive any cards from the members of the public who wish to address this subject. The public hearing on the Sky's the Limit Charter Academy charter petition is now closed. And yeah, thank you, guys. So next item, 16.1 is an information item. New course, Latin Mexican American Studies meets A through G requirements. 16.2 is business information item, business revolving cash report. 16 point. Okay. 16.3, business resolution number 2018-19. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Paris Union High School District authorizing the issuance of Paris Union High School District, Riverside County, California election of 2018 general obligation bonds, Series A, and actions related to thereto.
We'll have Kerrigan. This is the first issuance, first reading of the issuance that we talked about last month that Kerrigan will now talk about.
Good evening, President Garcia, members of the board, Superintendent Bennett, and cabinet and staff. This resolution sort of follows up on the AB 182 presentation that you got earlier tonight. And one of the requirements of AB 182 is when we bring a resolution to authorize bonds that include capital appreciation bonds, that we have to bring that resolution to 2 consecutive meetings. And so this is the first one. And the resolution is similar to the other GO bond resolutions you've seen. The process is a little bit different this time because recently the County Board of Supervisors has adopted a resolution pursuant to Education Code Section 15140B, and that authorizes school districts to issue bonds on their own behalf if they haven't had a qualified or a negative interim report on their most recent interim. And so that means that it's a sort of a single-step process where the district will just adopt a resolution that acts as the indenture for the bonds, and the bonds are issued pursuant to that resolution, rather than having a separate county resolution too. And so the resolution, it sets the basic parameters for the issuance of the bonds, the maximum par amount that can be issued, the maximum underwriter's discount. It gives an estimate of the costs involved in the issuance. In this case, we're looking at issuing the whole authorization at one time, which will, cut down on transaction costs quite a bit. The resolution also approves the form of a bond purchase agreement. That's the contract that'll be between the district and the underwriter that purchases the bonds and resells them to the public. And that document, that contract, sort of spells out all those conditions that are necessary to be met, all the deliverable documents in order to close the bond transaction once the bonds have been priced. The resolution approves a form of preliminary official statement. That's the offering prospectus for the bonds that describes not only all the characteristics of the bonds, but information about the district's credit, the tax base for repayment of the bonds, the current tax rates that are being levied in the district, the other debt that's outstanding, overlapping bond and assessment debt in the district. It gives an investor a means of judging the bonds as an investment and the credit of the economy in terms of repaying back those ad valorem taxes. Also attached as an exhibit or an appendix to the resolution are the forms of the actual bonds. In this case, we have different forms, whether they be current interest bonds or capital appreciation bonds or convertible capital appreciation bonds, as sort of a combination of the two. Those forms are going to have blanks in them, and they're form documents. The actual bonds will be prepared after the bonds are priced. According to those forms, we'll fill in all the data. There'll be a separate bond for each bond maturity of each type of bond. I think that's the basics for the resolution. Any particular questions about the issuance or the process? Okay. Sure.
Item 17.1 is an action item. Closed session if necessary.
No, thank you.
Item, oops, go again. Item 19.1, discipline. It's an action item. Action item for discipline, board review of discipline matters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Stafford, second. Mr. Nielsen. Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 19.1 is a 4-0 vote. Item 20.1, other items by the superintendent.
I just want to thank the board. I know that we've had some couple meetings in a row that have been long, but I know they're required for what we have to do as we're trying to build that new school. So I appreciate all your patience and understanding through this time.
Thank you. Item 20.1, adjournment. Well, I didn't get to finish reading, but Mr. Freeman and Mr. Stafford? Any discussion? All right, please vote. I do want to talk to you real quick. Item 21.1, adjournment. We are adjourning at 8:27 p.m. 4-0 vote.